Young, and the Restless recap Thurdays full episodes the 5th of March 2026. The growing mystery surrounding Nick Newman's recent disappearance has slowly begun to unsettle everyone closest to him, creating a quiet but unmistakable tension that spreads through the lives of those who know him best. For years, Nick has been seen as one of the most stable figures within the turbulent Newman family. Someone capable of navigating chaos while maintaining a sense of emotional balance that others often lack. Yet lately something about him has changed in ways that are difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. His absences have become longer, his responses more distant, and the steady reliability that once defined him now feels fragile. No Newman has noticed at first, sensing that something in his father's behavior is not right even when Nick insists everything is under control. Victoria Newman has also grown increasingly uneasy, interpreting Nick's silence not as independence but as a warning sign that he may be involved in something far more dangerous than he is willing to admit. Sharon Newman, perhaps the person who understands Nick's emotional patterns better than anyone else, feels the fear most deeply of all. She has seen this kind of quiet withdrawal before, moments when Nick begins carrying burdens alone until the pressure inevitably erupts into something destructive. The difference this time is that the disappearance feels deliberate, almost strategic. As if Nick is intentionally distancing himself from the people who might stop him from continuing down a path he believes he must follow. At the center of this troubling shift stands Matt Clark, a figure whose presence has gradually evolved from an irritation into a genuine threat. Matt is not simply another rival or antagonist in Genoa City's endless cycle of conflicts. There is something unstable about him, something unpredictable that transforms every interaction into a potential danger. Nick knows this better than anyone, which is precisely why his recent behavior has become so concerning to those around him. Instead of stepping back or seeking help, Nick has become increasingly fixated on confronting Matt alone, as though he believes that understanding the man's motivations will somehow allow him to control the situation. In his mind, the solution seems straightforward: stay close to Matt, anticipate his moves, and prevent whatever chaos he may be planning before it has the chance to unfold. But that strategy carries enormous risks, particularly because Nick has begun sacrificing his own well-being in the process. He disappears for long stretches without explanation, ignores phone calls from family members who are worried about him, and isolates himself in ways that only deepen the sense that something is spiraling beyond control. The silence surrounding Nick's whereabouts has only intensified the anxiety felt by those who care about him. Noah struggles with the feeling that his father is deliberately shutting him out, creating a distance that did not exist before. Victoria, accustomed to navigating dangerous corporate battles herself, suspects that Nick may be walking into a confrontation that could easily turn violent. Sharon's fear runs deeper, touching on something more personal and fragile. She remembers the darker chapters of Nick's life, particularly the times when his strength began to crumble under pressure. She knows how easily stress and emotional isolation can push him toward destructive choices. When Nick stops answering his phone, when he vanishes for hours without explanation, those old memories begin to resurface, filling her with the quiet dread that history may be repeating itself in a new and even more dangerous form. Eventually Nick does return, but the circumstances surrounding his reappearance only raise more questions. Instead of relief, the situation escalates immediately. Matt Clark, who has already demonstrated how erratic and volatile he can be, suddenly finds himself incapacitated after being injected with a sedative. The act is abrupt and unsettling, suggesting that someone has taken drastic measures to contain him before he could cause further harm. Yet the injection does not resolve the threat, it merely transforms it into something more unpredictable. Matt may be physically restrained for the moment, but his influence continues to spread through the cryptic messages he leaves behind. These messages arrive like fragments of a larger puzzle, strange and threatening in tone, filled with hints that something bigger is unfolding behind the scenes. Each message carries an unsettling implication that Matt is still several steps ahead, even while restrained. Nick believes he has a plan to deal with Matt, but the deeper he moves into this confrontation, the more uncertain the outcome becomes. His approach is built on the idea that understanding Matt's mindset will eventually give him the upper hand. If he can predict Matt's next move, he can stop the danger before it reaches the people he cares about, but that assumption may be dangerously flawed. Sharon and Nick have both acknowledged the uncomfortable truth about Matt. Reasoning with him is impossible. Matt does not operate according to logic or predictable motivations. His behavior suggests a mind that is increasingly detached from rational thought, driven by impulses and obsessions that cannot be negotiated or anticipated in the usual ways. The more Nick tries to treat this situation like a strategic game, the more he risks underestimating the depth of Matt's instability. That instability is what makes Matt Clark so dangerous. He is not simply angry or ambitious, he appears to be unraveling psychologically. His thoughts jump unpredictably from one idea to another, and the threatening messages he continues to send feel less like calculated warnings and more like the chaotic signals of someone who has lost control over his own reasoning. For someone in Matt's condition, confrontation does not lead to compromise, it leads to escalation. This is precisely why Sharon fears that Nick is walking directly into a trap. She understands that someone whose mental state is deteriorating cannot be outmaneuvered using ordinary logic. Every attempt to anticipate Matt's next move may only encourage him to push further into destructive territory. At the same time, Nick himself is not entirely stable in this situation either. The immense stress surrounding Matt has begun to expose vulnerabilities in Nick that he has tried to keep hidden. The pressure of tracking Matt's actions, deciphering his threatening messages, and protecting those around him has started to blur the boundaries between strategy and obsession. Nick's past struggles with addiction add another layer of complexity to this dangerous situation. The mention of fentanyl, which once represented one of the darkest chapters of his life, now hangs over the story like an ominous shadow. For Nick, that substance symbolizes a period when pain and confusion overwhelmed his ability to think clearly. Yet paradoxically, those experiences may also provide him with a strange form of insight into Matt's behavior. Someone who has stood on the edge of mental collapse understands the chaotic impulses that accompany it in ways others cannot. That unsettling possibility raises a troubling question. Could Nick's own past become the key to predicting Matt's next move? The psychological turmoil Matt appears to be experiencing may follow patterns that only someone familiar with extreme emotional breakdowns can recognize. If Nick can interpret those patterns, he might be able to anticipate Matt's next step before it happens, but relying on such insight carries its own danger. It requires Nick to revisit memories and emotional states that nearly destroyed him once before. Walking that line between understanding and reliving those experiences could easily pull him back toward the same destructive tendencies he fought so hard to escape. As the tension surrounding Matt Clark continues to escalate, the mystery of Nick Newman's disappearances begins to take on a darker significance. What initially appeared to be simple secrecy may actually be the sign of a man pushing himself deeper into a psychological battle that few people around him fully understand. Nick believes he is protecting his family by confronting Matt alone, but the isolation he has chosen may ultimately weaken him instead. The more he distances himself from Sharon, Noah, and Victoria, the more vulnerable he becomes to the unpredictable chaos Matt represents. What makes the situation especially dangerous is the sense that this conflict has not yet reached its true turning point. Matt's messages suggest that whatever plan he is pursuing is still unfolding, and Nick's attempt to stay ahead of him may only accelerate the inevitable confrontation. Each passing day increases the pressure on Nick's already fragile mental state, forcing him to rely on instincts shaped by both his strength and his past mistakes. If Matt truly understands the psychological weaknesses of the man pursuing him, then the entire situation could become a carefully designed trap rather than a spontaneous series of threats. For the Newman family, the uncertainty is almost unbearable. They can see the warning signs but cannot reach Nick in time to stop him. Noah senses danger but lacks the experience to intervene effectively. Victoria recognizes the strategic implications of what Nick may be facing but cannot control the situation from the outside. Sharon feels the emotional weight of it all, fearing that the man she cares about is drifting toward a confrontation that could cost him everything. And somewhere in the shadows of Genoa City, Matt Clark continues to send his unsettling messages, each one hinting that the next move in this dangerous game may already be in motion. Whether Nick's determination will allow him to outmaneuver Matt or whether his own past demons will cloud his judgment remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that this conflict is no longer simply about stopping a dangerous man. It is about whether Nick Newman can survive a psychological battle that threatens to drag him back into the very darkness he once fought so hard to escape. The growing storm inside Genoa City is once again centered around the iron grip of Victor Newman, a man who has spent decades proving that patience is not his defining trait when power or family is involved. Victor has always been known for his ability to wait, to observe, and to strike at precisely the right moment. But recent developments suggest that even Victor's legendary patience has finally reached its limit. The situation surrounding Chancellor, the Newman Empire, and the escalating conflict between several powerful families has pushed Victor to a point where subtle manipulation is no longer enough. Instead of quietly influencing events from the shadows, Victor appears ready to escalate matters into something far more dangerous. The upcoming revelations hint that Victor's frustration has grown so intense that he is now willing to unleash drastic actions to regain control of what he believes rightfully belongs to him. And as always in Genoa City, when Victor Newman decides to move forward with a plan, the consequences ripple through the lives of everyone connected to him. At the center of this conflict stands Cain Ashby, whose motivations appear driven not by corporate ambition but by something far more personal. Cain's priority is simple and deeply human. He wants to bring his family back together and ensure their safety. In a city where power struggles often overshadow emotional bonds, Cain's determination to protect Lily, Charlie, and Maddie carries a weight that contrasts sharply with the ruthless strategies unfolding around him. However, achieving that goal may require a sacrifice that few people would be willing to make. Cain understands that the only way to secure his family's safety might involve returning Chancellor to Victor Newman. That realization creates a moral dilemma that stretches far beyond business strategy. Chancellor is not just another corporation, it represents influence, legacy, and control over a significant portion of Genoa City's corporate landscape. Giving it back to Victor would shift the balance of power dramatically, reinforcing the dominance that the Newman patriarch has spent years building. Yet for Cain, the safety of his family may outweigh every other consideration. Victor, however, has grown tired of waiting for the situation to resolve itself. His patience with negotiations and corporate maneuvering appears to have reached its breaking point. The man who once relied on carefully orchestrated power plays has now chosen a far more direct and terrifying strategy. Instead of continuing to manipulate events through financial pressure or legal tactics, Victor has allegedly turned to something far darker: kidnapping. And this time, the victim is none other than Jack Abbott. The choice of Jack as a target is not random. The rivalry between Victor Newman and Jack Abbott is one of the longest and most bitter conflicts in Genoa City history. For decades, the two men have battled for dominance in business, influence, and personal pride. By abducting Jack, Victor is not merely sending a warning. He is striking directly at the heart of the Abbott family, forcing Billy Abbott and the rest of the Abbotts into a situation where every decision could carry devastating consequences. Jack's disappearance instantly transforms the conflict from a corporate struggle into a personal crisis. Billy Abbott, who has already been navigating a complicated web of ambitions and relationships, now faces a choice that could define the rest of his life. Billy has fought relentlessly to gain control of Chancellor, seeing the company as both a professional victory and a symbol of his ability to step out from the shadow of his powerful rivals. Yet Victor's latest move threatens to turn that victory into a devastating liability. If Billy refuses to surrender Chancellor, Jack's life could remain in danger. But if he gives the company back to Victor, he will lose everything he fought to achieve. The decision becomes even more painful when Billy considers the fragile state of his personal life. His attempt to rebuild a relationship with Sally Spectra is already uncertain, and surrendering Chancellor could alter the path of that reconciliation entirely. In a cruel twist of fate, the very power Billy sought to secure his future may now force him to sacrifice the future he hoped to share with Sally. Meanwhile, another key player in this unfolding drama finds herself standing at a crossroads that could redefine her role in Genoa City. Phyllis Summers has always been a complicated figure, driven by fierce loyalty to her family but often willing to cross dangerous lines in pursuit of her goals. Recent events suggest that Phyllis may have inherited control over the Newman Empire, a development that places her in an extraordinary position of power. For someone with Phyllis's ambitious and unpredictable personality, that kind of authority could easily lead to chaos, yet it also offers her an opportunity to rewrite her story. Power, in this case, becomes both a temptation and a chance for redemption. Phyllis now faces a critical choice: continue down the path of manipulation and control that has defined much of her past, or use her newfound influence to correct the mistakes that have strained her relationships with the people she loves most. That choice becomes even more complicated when considering the fragile state of Phyllis's relationship with her children. Daniel Romalotti Jr. has struggled for years with the emotional fallout of his mother's decisions, often finding himself caught between love and disappointment. Summer Newman, who carries both the Newman and Abbott legacies within her identity, has also experienced the consequences of Phyllis's unpredictable behavior. These relationships are not simply background details in Phyllis's life. They are the emotional anchors that determine whether she sees herself as a mother capable of growth or a woman destined to repeat the same destructive patterns. The upcoming weekend may offer Phyllis a chance to begin repairing the bond she once shared with Daniel. Rebuilding that connection will not be easy, and it certainly cannot happen through grand gestures alone. It will require humility, honesty, and a willingness to prioritize family over personal pride, qualities that Phyllis has struggled to maintain in the past. Yet the path toward redemption may also require Phyllis to take decisive action in the larger crisis unfolding around her. If the reports are accurate, she could become the key figure capable of rescuing Jack Abbott, Lily Winters, Charlie Ashby, and Maddie Ashby from the dangerous situation created by Victor's ruthless strategy. Such an act would represent a dramatic shift in how others perceive her. For years, Phyllis has often been seen as someone who creates chaos rather than resolving it. By stepping forward to save multiple lives, she could transform that narrative entirely. However, the circumstances surrounding this potential rescue suggest that her choices may not be entirely voluntary. Pressure from powerful figures, moral obligation, and the desperate need to repair her relationship with Daniel and Summer could all combine to push her toward doing what many would consider the right thing. Even if Phyllis ultimately acts heroically, the motivation behind her decision will remain complicated. Redemption born from pressure is not the same as redemption born from genuine transformation. Still, in the world of Genoa City, actions often matter more than intentions. If Phyllis becomes the person who stops Victor's dangerous plan and saves the hostages caught in the conflict, it could open the door to forgiveness from the people she cares about most. Daniel and Summer have both struggled to reconcile their love for their mother with the pain caused by her choices. Seeing her take a stand against Victor's ruthless tactics might finally convince them that she is capable of change. As these storylines converge, the looming question remains: what exactly does Victor Newman intend to do with Jack Abbott? Victor's history suggests that he rarely takes extreme measures without a carefully calculated objective. Jack's kidnapping may be designed to force Billy's hand in the Chancellor dispute, but it could also serve a deeper strategic purpose. Victor may be testing the loyalty and resolve of everyone involved, pushing his rivals into situations where their true priorities become impossible to hide. For Billy, the test revolves around family versus ambition. For Phyllis, it is redemption versus power. For Kane and Lily, it is safety versus pride. Ultimately, the fate of Chancellor and the safety of the hostages may depend on whether Billy Abbott is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. If he chooses to return Chancellor to Victor in exchange for Jack's freedom, he could save his brother's life but lose the professional victory that defined his recent journey. If he refuses, the consequences could be devastating not only for Jack but for the fragile relationships Billy has been trying to rebuild. And hovering over every decision is Victor Newman, the architect of this escalating crisis, watching carefully to see which of his enemies will break first. In Genoa City, power has always come at a cost, and the coming days may reveal exactly how much each character is willing to lose in order to protect the people they love.